Okay, it's 6 p.m. Monday, May 15th. This is a regular assembly meeting of the Petersburg Borough Assembly. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Thomas,
Here.
Donna,
Here.
Bob,
Here.
Jeff, David,
Here.
Scott,
Here.
Mark.
Here. Okay, we have a full assembly in the chambers this evening. It's now time for the voluntary pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, first item on the agenda tonight, item 3, approval of minutes from the May 2nd, 2023 assembly meeting. I would entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
Second.
Okay, if there's everybody in, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, those minutes are approved unanimously. Item 4, amendment and approval of this evening's meeting agenda. Are there any proposed amendments assembly members would like to make? Seeing none, all those in favor with moving ahead with the agenda as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, we'll move forward with the agenda as presented. Okay, this evening we have multiple public hearings. The first one is a public hearing for ordinance 2023-06. This is an ordinance updating various sections of chapter 14.08 of the municipal code entitled Sewer Utility. Any public testimony regarding this ordinance should be given at this time. Anybody interested in have any input on this ordinance? Okay, that public hearing is now closed. Moves us to the second public hearing, and that's for ordinance 2023-07. This is an ordinance amending sections 14.20.125, 14.20.250, and 14.20.380 of chapter 14.20 municipal harbors of the Petersburg Municipal Code to address liveaboards and other residential users of vessels moored in municipal harbors and to increase the penalty for speeding, excuse me, or excessive wake. So if there's anyone in the audience that would like to testify, you step forward, state your name, and you have 5 minutes.
Hi, thanks for hearing me. My name's Abby Hosier, and I own the sailing vessel Ebb and Flow in Middle Harbor, and I am a liveaboard along with my partner Dana. My concern is I just know there's a lot of fees and possibilities of things happening to maybe create less liveaboards in this community. Wanted to present myself as a acting member of this community. I do tender our fleet. My partner is a cabins recreational lead. We utilize our liveaboard specifically during the summer months to maintain our seasonal jobs. We own property on Kupernoth that is rural, difficult to access. Great during the winter months, but during our summertime, when we need to be in town maintaining our jobs that are doing good for our community, we need to have access to our liveaboard. Otherwise, we don't have any options in town that are affordable for us to be in a situation in which we won't be in debt. I just wanted to make that a statement and just let you know that that is something that we really need in our lives in order to maintain our positions and continue on. So that is all. Thank you.
Thank you for your input. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to talk during this public hearing on ordinance 2023-07? Seeing none, this public hearing is closed. Moves us to the next public hearing of the evening. And this is on ordinance 2023-08. This is an ordinance of the Petersburg Borough adopting the budget for fiscal year July 1st, 2023 through June 30th, 2024. Any public testimony regarding this ordinance should be given at this time.
Good evening. My name is Karen Morrison. I'm representing myself, but for full disclosure, I am the Director of Finance for the Petersburg School District. First off, I want to thank the borough members who have actually attended our school board meetings this spring. as well as those who've come into the district office to talk with the superintendent and I. I am requesting that the Petersburg Borough approve the $3 million appropriation for the Petersburg School District as requested. I do have a lot of knowledge about the school district's finances and want to address a few questions that I've heard. First off, the district has in good faith not asked the borough for more than what's needed annually. We have reduced teaching staff through attrition, reduced programs, worked very hard to leverage our grants. We provide modest salary increases, and our accounts payable, payroll, human resources, and grant writing department consists of the superintendent, the administrative assistant, and myself. We are a lean, efficient team. The superintendent, Erica Clue-Painter, and I are always available to talk about the challenges and the complexities of school finance. As a public institution, we're required to provide equal access to a robust education and opportunities for all students, and we rely primarily on local and state funding. Petersburg School District needs an increase at the local and at the state level for the district to continue to provide the outstanding education that we're known for statewide and to navigate the new state requirements with the READS Act. I personally am super proud to be part of the Petersburg School District and that my kids both graduated from here with educations that have served them well to pursue their aspirations. I have a son who's an officer in the Navy who has been accepted at Johns Hopkins for his master's in cyber warfare, and I have a daughter who goes to Yale. They've had really high quality educations here. I would like to see that the outstanding educational opportunities and experiences that my kids have been able to receive keep going for the students and the families in this community. And I would encourage the borough to fully fund the school district's request so that these important services can continue to make Petersburg the wonderful community that it is. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony this evening. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak in this public hearing?
Was up, I think I did last time. Sorry. All right, good evening. My name's Erica Clue-Painter and I am the superintendent of the Petersburg School District. I really do want to thank the Assembly for passing the budget at first reading with the full $3 million funding request for the school district from the last meeting. And I encourage you to pass the budget again at second reading tonight. After years of conservative budgeting and strategic reductions, it is time to make an investment in our schools. Until last year, the district has not requested an increase in funding since I started working here as a principal in 2001. I wholeheartedly agree that we should look at every position carefully and consider whether we still need it or whether it can be eliminated or reduced. We go through this process each time a teacher, administrator, office staff, or paraprofessional resigns or retires from our district. In many cases, we have reduced or eliminated these positions and added the duties to current staff members or have removed programs completely. We all wear multiple hats, as Karen just mentioned, in this district to maintain the high quality program our families and community expect, but there is a limit to those duties. We currently have the same number of students as we did in 2012, with substantially higher fixed costs, minimal funding increases from the state, and flat funding from the borough. There are very few places to go without drastic reductions to activities, the water safety program, teaching staff, and course offerings. Without a funding increase from both the borough and the state, these reductions will have to be implemented. Our school district receives the lowest local funding contribution of any community in Southeast and compared to most districts around the state. Many communities fund to the cap and beyond in order to support their schools and students. And even as we are working on our budget, we are still creating a conservative budget moving forward for the upcoming school year with only one additional reading specialist position that is required to address the READS Act that's coming to us. There is no fluff. As you know, Jody has prepared a balanced budget that accommodates the $3 million request, which includes $1.1 million from the Secure Rural Schools Fund, which is dedicated to schools. And I believe she's also presented some ideas for funding the school district's request into the future with reduced reliance on Secure Rural Schools funds. I know you all have a lot to consider as you're moving forward through these budget sessions, and I really appreciate your support over the years, and thank you for taking my testimony.
Thank you for your testimony this evening. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak under the public hearing for the ordinance 2023-08 about the budget? Seeing none, that public hearing is closed. That brings us to the next public hearing. This public hearing is for ordinance 2023-09. This is an ordinance repealing chapters 14 or 11.48, 11.52, 11.56, and 11.60 of the former City of Petersburg Code and PMC Chapter 11.96 and amending the Petersburg Municipal Charter, I believe, sections 11.12, 0.040, 14.20, 0.360, and 14.20, 0.380. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak under this public hearing? Seeing none, that public hearing is also closed. Item E, this public hearing is for ordinance 2023-10. This is an ordinance amending section 16.12.030, section A of chapter 16.12, acquisition and disposal of borough-owned lands of the Petersburg Municipal Code, and to add federally recognized tribes to the list of entities that may purchase borough property for less than assessed value if determined by the assembly to be in the best interest of the borough. This is the time to speak under this public hearing, if there's anyone in the audience that would like to speak.
Good evening. My name is Chris Morrison. I am speaking on behalf of the Petersburg Indian Association as the president of its tribal council. In case you didn't know, PIA's governing body consists of 6 members at large and the president, all of whom are elected by the tribe. So it's akin to the borough's governing body. A little bit of history. In 1948, in accordance with Section 16 of the Indian Reorganization Act of June 18, 1934, as amended by the Acts of June 15, 1935, and May 1, 1936, PIA's constitution was approved by the Assistant Secretary of the Interior and ratified in an election by, quote, the adult Indians residing on Mitkoff Island, whose names appear on a roll compiled under the direction of the Secretary of the Interior, end quote. My great-grandmother, Mary Rusk, and my grandparents, William and Flora Allen, were named on that roll. In the 75 years since the Constitution's ratification, PIA's status as a government has been officially recognized and its tribal sovereignty acknowledged by the federal government and the state of Alaska in their statutes, codes, rules, and regulations. I urge the Borough Assembly to do the same by updating the Code of Ordinances where pertinent in a manner which acknowledges that federally recognized tribes are governments and treats them as such. According to an FAQ on the Bureau of Indian Affairs website, a federally recognized tribe is defined as an American Indian or Alaska Native tribal entity that is recognized as having a government-to-government relationship with the United States, with the responsibilities, powers, limitations, and obligations attached to that designation. I suggest and believe that any benefit imparted by the borough to the state or federal governments should be extended to tribal governments as well. Approving ordinance 2023-10, which would add federally recognized tribes to a list of entities that currently includes only state or federal agencies or nonprofits, would be a good first step. Thank you.
Testimony on this ordinance this evening. Anyone else in the audience this evening that would like to speak under this public hearing for ordinance 2023-10? Seeing none, that public hearing is now closed. Brings us to item 6 on tonight's agenda, bid awards. There are none this evening. Next item, item 7, is persons to be heard related to items on today's agenda. So if there's anyone in the audience who would like to speak to an item on the agenda tonight, now's your time. On to item 8, this is persons to be heard on items unrelated to tonight's agenda. So if there's something they'd like to speak to that's not on the agenda, now's the time to do so. Okay, we'll move on. Item 9, boards, commission, and committee reports. There's one topic under that, Housing Needs Assessment Survey. Assembly member and Housing Task Force Chair Kinsinger will update the assembly on the rollout of the Housing Needs Assessment Survey. Member Kinsinger.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm pleased to announce to the community that the housing survey will be available first during this weekend at Little Norway Festival. We're going to have a booth set up on the main street. So if you'd like to fill out one of these surveys, that'd be great. We're going to have them available so you can either fill them out via a QR code, and a lot of people I know don't want to do that. They're also available via a website, and I know a lot of other people don't want to do that either. So we will have paper copies available for people that want to do it that way. It's a relatively short survey. The consultants say it takes about 8 minutes. I think I'd figure on 12 to 15. It's basically what they're trying to do is they're trying to find out from us what we need in housing. And this is one of the main sources of data that they're going to have is what we tell them. And what they're trying to find out is a couple of things. They want to know what we need now, what we're going to need in the future, and then what we're going to need in the near future. And anything you do with housing, as I've discovered, is expensive. The borough is not the end all for the answer for this. It's going to require a lot of buy-in from a lot of other organizations in town and a lot of other private entities in town. But so I want to encourage everybody, if you have an opportunity, drop by the booth. We'll be there both days during Little Norway. We'll have a big sign up. We'll say housing survey. Take the survey. If you don't have a chance to take it this weekend, the surveys are going to be available via the borough website. We'll have the web link, the QR code, also be available, paper copies at the front desk, the city offices, also available at the library, and KFSK has also agreed to make paper copies available there as well. We'd like to have the surveys back in about 2 to 3 weeks. So if you have a chance, please do this. Tell your friends, neighbors. We want to get as many different people as possible. We just don't want all the mature people like me to be filling out the survey in town because our housing needs are obviously different than somebody that's 40 years younger than me. So we're also going to probably be reaching out to PIA, see if they can help us. We're also going to be distributing the surveys through the borough office of borough employees, and then also hopefully to the school. And if they can get as many of their employees to fill out these surveys, that would be good. And if you have any questions, give me a call, stop by this weekend. It's a very interesting survey. You don't have to sign your name to it or anything. It's all just kind of like, just baseline information. Thanks.
All right, thanks for that report, Member Kinsinger. Next item on the agenda, consent agenda. No items there. Report of other officers. No reports from other officers. Mayor's report today is very short. Just enjoy the beautiful weekend and the May festivities. And that brings us to the manager's report.
Thank you, sir. Our smoke detector installation at the manor has been completed in assisted living. Our Hoyer lift has arrived and is already put into service at the manor. And we got the paperwork from the state on getting ready for our annual inspection up there. So the staff will be working on that. I have started the process of transitioning payroll from Michelle to Derek. You may remember when we first started this route, Michelle helped us out by continuing to do the payroll for assisted living. We're at a position now where that can be transitioned to Derek. And we'll work on this in conjunction with taking a look at a new time card system. Friends of the Library will hold a pop-up specialty book DVD sale and silent auction in the library foyer Monday, May 15th through Wednesday, May 17th. Proceeds support the local library and school libraries. Information is at psglib.org. Engineers are working on the final design for the Pump Station 4 project. They were in town on May 11th to familiarize themselves with the site, make sure any questions they have are answered. Staff set up the public restroom trailers with assistance from Public Works, thanks to all of them. In the EMD 16 overhaul continues with testing to begin shortly after all the parts are installed and insulation testing is performed. Unit will be available for the SEPA shutdown. NC Machinery was here in town starting on May 5th and began their work on rebuilding the CAT 398. They are progressing well and not heard of any more issues. McGee Constructors Dawson Joint Venture was our contractor for the Blind Slough Hydro project, officially mobilized to the site on May 4th. It has begun installing site erosion infiltration control measures. Planning is underway to install the penstock bypass on May 30th and shut down the hydro on June 12th after the SEPA shutdown. So we're getting a lot closer to this project really kicking off. Line crew has placed the Little Norway banners and the class of 2023 banners on the light poles downtown. Congratulations to all of our graduating seniors at Petersburg High School. Our digital fingerprint machine is now installed and training has been completed. We're currently working out the last detail with the state of Alaska and working with the Forest Service, I believe, also as well, to see if we can help their needs on fingerprinting. Should be available to the public anytime. Chief Kerr completed leadership for troubling times training and response to active shooter and terrorism training. Spring maintenance is continuing for the road system with grading, pothole repair, street washing, and street sweeping as weather permits. Our street crew has been helping set up the Mayfest tent, and that we'll finish all that up this week. Sanitation is coordinating with the chamber for Mayfest trash pickup. We recently purchased 4,000 yards of shot rock from Reed Brothers to use for maintenance projects until such time as we can do some more pit development at our airport quarry. Landfill and Baylor are busy with spring deliveries and more trash being generated at the harbors. And Stephanie spent some time last week in Juneau to gain information regarding their major pool renovations. Wanted her to review the RFPs Juneau is using and make the connections with the contractors if possible. We're still looking for someone who can help us with the needed interior painting of the aquatic center. PMEA negotiating team will reconvene this week, tomorrow actually, to work on negotiating a new 3-year contract. Jody, Becky, Debbie, and I met with our health insurance broker to discuss possible solutions to the very large increase in costs. We're hoping to have an alternative solution ready to discuss with the union. And the final assembly and installation of specialized components for the new fire truck started last week and should be seeing it hopefully here by the end of the summer. And we had some successful discussions between the hospital and Mountain View Food Services on options related to sharing space at elderly housing. The two groups, with help from Michelle and some of my staff, came up with a solution that will work at least in the short term for them. So that'll be a nice service. It allows the hospital to apply for a grant that they were looking for. And that's it for my report.
Okay, thank you, Manager Giesbrecht. Any questions of Manager Giesbrecht?
Two questions through the mayor. May I ask Chief Kerr regarding his training? Thank you. How, with this training that you've completed, what then do you do with it now?
So there's actually two different ones, the active shooter, active threat, terrorism stuff. We're actually doing, our department's actually above the standard, what they request and what this, basically what the standard is for a response to that in the level of training. So that was good to hear. As far as the leadership for troubling times, it talks about the mental health of officers. It talks about how to get them out of ruts, how to notice through their work performance and through their communication with the public. Talks about if they're having problems with the public and their communication, how it affects their work life. It's basically work-life balance and everything combined into one, all the stuff that's happening nowadays with the troubles in law enforcement and how to deal with them. I've got the full breakdown in a packet. I can show you if you'd like.
Yes, question to the manager. I know we talked last year about getting some vehicles moved out of Papke's. They're still there. At the time, we wanted to know what was happening with the impoundment lot, and that seemed to be the impediment. Outside of that, and the cost of actually finding if anybody would pay to tow them. Is there any update?
Kind of. Shortly after we had that meeting and discussed it, I spoke with DNR. The folks that we normally deal with DNR are different than the people who manage things like car removals. So they forwarded me to this young lady at DNR who handles that. Thanks to your help, we submitted some VIN numbers and such to DNR to have them look at it. She called me back and said she needed authorization from over her head to work on it. I followed back up with her, and then she was no longer employed by DNR. So it's still an ongoing issue with DNR. I haven't dropped it, but it's just hard to get through their system. We also have an issue in town about tow truck removals. There are 2 tow trucks, Chris, if I get this wrong. One of them, which is, private sector individual, and then another that is a company that's really, really busy and has not had much chance to help us out in that factor. We're still trying to work through that and work with the troopers to find out, what can we do? It is state property, so it's hard for us to tow things away from a state property without their authorization. And, it may be that we're gonna have to get authorization from the troopers rather than working through DNR. It'll be a never ending problem until we own that property, in my opinion.
Thank you.
Any other questions of the manager on his report? Member Marsh?
Thank you, through the mayor. Mr. Giesbrecht, I wonder if you would elaborate more on the adult daycare and how it would affect the operations at Mountain View Manor with the request for 5 nights a week meal services. Would you give us a rundown,
Sure.
please?
Yes, I can, through the mayor. This started out when the hospital approached me to do, they were looking into providing adult day services. So basically, if you have somebody in your home that needs extra help and you're taking care of them, a place that you could take them and give yourself a break. So go get your hair done, go get something to eat, go hang out with your friends, kind of get a break from your other job of in-home care for an elder. I think that's a needed service in town, and we've heard a lot of that from folks. The challenge was finding a location. There are a bunch of restrictions on how the size of the facility that has to handle it. So many of the places we started off looking at weren't big enough. We talked about elderly housing as a potential because they have both a dining room that at the time and still is not being used, and then an activities room that is used. So we kind of fixated on the dining room. And at that point, we needed to talk to Mountain View Food Services because we have a contract with them that allows them access. The existing contract was 3 days for 3 meals, excuse me. So we needed to make sure we didn't interfere with their operations. So we met with their board, had a conversation. They had some questions and we kind of went back and forth a little bit. And then last week we met with them, the Mountain View Food Services board, or members of their board, members of the hospital, and then a couple of folks from my staff to kind of facilitate. And what was determined after a couple of conversations was it would work real well if the hospital could commit to from 7 in the morning to noon. That was one of the other restrictions that the grant says it has to be for at least minimum 4 hours in duration. So 7 to noon is the pick time. And Mountain View Food Services did not want it to be on Tuesdays. That's when they get their freight in, and they use a lot of those tables in there to kind of outline there and get things moved around. That was okay with the hospital. Hospital's plan would be to move this to another location that is waiting on some potential renovation money, but they need to apply for the grant and they need to put in the grant where it can be until such time that that happens. So this is hopefully a short-term thing. It's a grant for about $500,000 that the hospital's requested to do this. And it may be in fact that the alternative, the preferred location may actually happen before the hospital even gets the grant, but I can't speak to that. So that was finalized Friday of last week. Debbie now has the information she needs. We will go through the process of altering the contract we have with Mountain View Food Services. I offered as part of it to make it, happy for everyone. I reduced we were going to charge Mountain View Food Services $850 a month because they had expanded service to five meals a week. They're still going to do 5 meals a week, but we're going to keep it at the $500 they're currently paying. Again, they're both services that I think are pretty critical to the community. And as I told them, we're not trying to make money on this. We're just trying to make sure we cover our costs, if any, for providing those services. So cleaning, maintenance on equipment in the kitchen, that kind of thing. So I was not planning on charging the hospital, again, because they're just basically using space. And everybody seems to be okay with that so far. To be honest with you, I told both groups, I said, this works a lot better. If there's any problems, do you guys work it out among yourselves? If the borough gets involved then or needs to get involved, we will. But it's far better if those two groups, if they have issues or concerns, talk to each other, work it out. And that seemed to work out really well for them. Anyway, hopefully it's something that comes together. They're not ready. No one's ready to start anything up yet because again, they're using this to apply for a grant and there's no telling how long that'll take for the grant to show up. And I can try to fill in anything I didn't say.
Follow-up question. So would it make sense? I'm wondering if there's any interest for a private business to strike up a new venture to have adult daycare. And, just as young children, they have to meet certain requirements with the state. I would imagine the same thing would apply or similar structure would apply for the adult daycare. So I almost hate to see government expanding at greater cost when it could be handled by a private enterprise.
I can't speak for the hospital and I truly do not know the ins and outs of what it takes to provide that service. But I would guess that there's plenty of room for a private sector company to jump in here if there's anybody's interested. I would suggest that they probably talk to the home health nurses who are kind of leading this charge and talk to them about it. And I think they've got some pretty clear information on what it takes to do this service. And you're right, there's a bunch of certification issues that come into play. But what we heard in the meetings was there's a lot of need for this. They're getting a lot of phone calls from people. Is there anyone who can watch my mom or, my dad for a couple hours so I can get out of the house? And I would assume that with our growing elderly population, that this is going to be a problem that's going to keep happening. So I think there's probably a lot of room for private sector company. At one time, I believe there was an organization in town that provided a version of, coming into your home and helping take care. I don't know if they're still active. I also don't know if they have had staffing issues. And I think was it Cornerstone? I think that was the name of the company. But they have not jumped up and volunteered to do anything like this. So.
Questions, Member Mucci?
Yeah, thank you. Just to follow up to that discussion, I think the Mountain View Manor is just a stopgap measure for the next several months. I think there is an organization in town that is working with the home health care folks to give them a spot. And that spot's not ready, like Steve mentioned, but the borough thing is just a part-time thing until they needed a place to sign up for their grant process. So as far as I can see, it's just a part-time thing. Thank you.
Questions of the manager? I have one question for Mr. Giesbrecht. In your report, you talked about the overhaul of the EMD generator, EMD 16. I was talking to someone the other day and they said there were some complications on getting parts, or the repair was more extensive than
Both.
we anticipated. So is that gonna drive the costs up enough from what we thought it was gonna cost us to potentially have to raise electrical rates? Like we did the sewer?
Carl's online and I'm gonna answer it and then he can correct me if I say anything wrong, which is, no, it won't, that by itself will not drive up electrical rates anymore. And yes, both things happened. So when they tore into it, they found more extensive problems than they initially thought. And the parts for those repairs were hard to come by. So we had to literally start trying to figure out across the country, can we find the parts for it? Carl, did I get any of that right?
You got all of it right, actually, Mr. Manager. That's a great question. And so we had planned on rebuilding the engine of the EMD 16. And what we found was that the generator end bearing, which was not part of our project, was inspected and found to be in really bad shape, actually. So we did have to, as Steve said, find parts kind of on the fly. And those parts, some of them came from North Carolina, some of them came from Washington State. I think one part even came from Texas, to try to amass all those things together and get it installed while the MSI mechanics were in town.
Okay, thank you. So it's getting hard to get parts. Maybe in the future, we'll be looking for a complete new generation system, unfortunately. All right, thank you for that. Any other questions? Okay, that brings us to unfinished business. And item A is ordinance 2023-06, an ordinance updating various sections of chapter 14.08 of the municipal code entitled sewer utility. This is the second reading. We just had a public hearing on this ordinance. If adopted in 3 readings, this will change the fiscal year 2024 sewer utility rate increase from 3% to 6%. I'd entertain a motion to adopt this ordinance in its second reading.
So
Second.
Motion's been made with a second. Discussion. Seeing none. Clerk, call the roll.
Donna,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
Jeff, Mark,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Scott,
yes.
Ordinance 2023-06 passes unanimously in its second reading. That brings us to item B under unfinished business. Ordinance 2023-07. This is an ordinance amending sections 14.20.125, 14.20.250, and 14.20.380 of chapter 14.20 municipal harbors of the Petersburg Municipal Code to address liveaboards and other residential uses of vessels moored in municipal harbors and to increase the penalty for speeding or excessive wake. And this is the second reading. And again, we had a public hearing on this ordinance earlier in the meeting. I'd entertain a motion to adopt this ordinance in its second reading.
So move.
Second?
Motion been made by member Bucci, seconded by member Kinsinger. Discussion. None? Will clerk call the roll?
David,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Donna,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Scott, Jeff,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes. Okay, ordinance 2023-07 passes unanimously. Next item under unfinished business, ordinance 2023-08. This is an ordinance adopting the budget for fiscal year July 1st, 2023 through June 30th, 2024. This is the second reading. Entertain a motion to approve this in its second reading.
So move.
Need discussion. We had a motion and a second discussion. Member Marsh.
Thank you. So I wonder how this relates with the additional funding from the state for the school district. They up their student base allocation to $670 some odd perhaps. So I wonder if that's an extra $300,000 based on 450 students. So I wonder if that would affect how much we allocate to the district.
You know, that's a good question. I've kind of had the same type of a question. If the state came through with more funding for the school district, if we could pay less than the additional, million they're asking for. And if I'm not mistaken, that Jody, do we pay them in phases over the year? We don't give them one,
Monthly.
pay them monthly, so there's possibly room to adjust it if they do, come up with enough money, to maybe lengthen the time we can use the secure rural schools money that we have in the bank. But, that's a good question, so, if. So I don't know, are you thinking of making a motion of some sort of?
Not right now, no.
Rubici?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to make a motion to increase the Mountain View Food Services budget to $42,800, which is the original amount they requested. This increase in the general fund budget of $17,800, which will be paid for from the borough's general fund reserves.
I'll second that.
Motion's been made by member Mucci, seconded by member Kinsinger to amend the budget to fully fund the Mountain View Food Services request to $48,800 coming from the general fund reserves. Discussion on that amendment. Member Mucci.
Yeah, thank you. Just a little back history on this. The board's working really hard to provide meals for the community. I think last month they provided 1,100 meals for folks in and around town. They just started their congregant meals up at Mountain View Manor just, I think, last week or early this week. So it's a well-run operation. I think there's some things that could be looked at in the future, but I think they need this money to keep this thing going. I think there was been a lot of talk about donating fish and stuff to help their program out, but they've got some strict guidelines on anything that's donated part of for food has to be run through like coastal cold storage or Tonka. So this is a well needed service that the community needs. So thank you.
Any other comments or input on the amendment? Member Marsh.
Yes, thank you. I actually am opposed to this. I believe the Mountain View Manor Food Services does meet a need. But I also think it is a convenience for many of the folks who get these meals. And I think it cuts into private business, the restaurants in town. I know Petersburg has a high turnover of restaurants, but there's, it seems like those who are in place have been for a while. And because they bring something to the community that it is wanted and makes it very appealing. So I am opposed to this on that basis, that it does cut into private business. So that's my point. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other input on the amendment? Member Kinsinger.
My understanding is that this is not a permanent ask, that this is an ask because one, they're trying to expand their service from 3 nights to 5 nights a week. And that because they also didn't receive around $30,000 in grants that they had hoped to receive. This program costs a lot more than $42,000 a year. I don't have the exact amount, but it's several $100,000. And so this is just a small part of it. The main thing that I have concern about is that those folks that are able to pay for this service should pay for this service, because by them paying for this service enables the program to continue and will enable the program to reach out to the people that are unable to pay. And there are quite a few people that are in that category. And I understand it is convenience. The thing that really piqued my interest was, thank you, Aaron, you pointed out the last meeting that when people deliver the meals, it's the one point of contact that a lot of these individuals have. And it's also enables them to have a contact with somebody that can get them the help that they need. And a lot of times do need help and don't reach out. And I think that's a money savings in itself. If you look at how much it costs society if somebody waits too long to have something dealt with. That said, I think the amount of money that we've been giving to this program has been pretty small over the history of the program. And I'd like to see it continue. And it's just not because I'm eligible to eat.
Member Newman.
I don't have a problem with helping people that have a demonstrated need. And I think that this program does serve that. But I also think that there are people that take advantage of the program. And I am not in support of that. Then it just becomes a giveaway of our money. And I don't think that's fair to the private enterprise, you know, the businesses that offer food services locally, like Member Marsh commented on. So, you know, and so if we're giving away free meals, we're hurting private enterprise, and that's not a good thing for a community. So this is kind of a contentious issue. Mr. Manager, can you speak to this a little bit? So there's been some discussion this last week. Would you mind?
Yeah, no, not a problem.
Thank
But through the mayor, I mean, we had some serious conversations with Mountain View Food Services on this topic, because as we talked about the issue with the adult day services, some of those questions came up in passing. So I think you're looking at a group that they've consistently provided a very good service. On the other hand, you know, they're now asking to expand that. In fact, have been already doing it from 3 days a week to 5 days a week. And, you know, they're saying that they need the money. I can't question that. I am not inside their finances. And I know they wanted to start back the congregate meals. I don't know if in fact that started yet or not. And that's going to be another issue. Many of the questions that came up in conversation, I sent them to Mountain View Food Services. They did respond to those, and I believe I sent those out to all the assembly to take a look at. I can't argue for or against this service because I don't run it. I don't really know all the ins and outs of the details of what they've got available to them. I do know that there are many people that really count on the service. I mean, that part of it is, but how, as you know, you and Donna have said, how do you segregate those folks out from the people that are using it as a free meal that can't afford it? And I don't have an answer to that. Sorry, I just don't.
Yeah, I just, you know, it's a tough issue for me because I want to support private enterprise. I want to see, you know, them take a hit. And I think that they obviously are taking a hit. And you look at the community of Wrangell, they have several thriving food services, you know, food providers. And, you know, look at our town, we don't have a lot of options. And, you know, we have El Zarape that hangs on in the wintertime and takes care of people, and they do well in the wintertime, but that's a tough thing to make a go of it in the wintertime. I just feel like we need to support private enterprise as much as anybody else. And I just, you know, if there's a way that we can accommodate the people that have a demonstrated need without coming at the expense of private enterprise. So I don't know what the answer is, but maybe, you know, I would support the proposed budget of 25,000, but I don't think I would support the 43,000.
Right now, there's an amendment on the floor to raise the funding for Mountain View Food Services to $48,800, if I wrote it down right.
42,800, I believe.
So, okay, we're gonna vote on that amendment. If there's no other input, clerk call the roll.
Jeff,
Yes.
Scott,
No.
Thomas,
Yes.
Donna,
No.
Mark,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
David.
Yes.
Okay, that amendment passes to fully fund the Mountain View Food Services to $42,800 with a 5-2 vote with members Marsh and members Newman opposed. And that brings us back to the main motion as amended for the budget.
Mayor, I have
Member Lynn.
I have two proposals here, and I'll take one at a time. Yes, on page 67, we have DCRA, local government bust revenue. And it's under that, we have a grant writer for $40,000. And I know that that's there, I support that 100%. What it is what I believe, and you can correct me wrong, manager, if you will, is that if we get the opportunity to apply for different grants under the infrastructure bills and those bills, that's what it was intended to do. I agree with that. What I'd like to do is add to it one other way to spend it, and that would be, is right now we have an application before DNR to acquire Papke's Landing. And we're gonna need money to do that. What that's gonna entail, we don't know yet, unless the manager knows something I don't. So what I'd like to do is add to that is the option to use that money either way, either for a grant writer if we need it, or to apply it also to Papke's to acquire it.
Second.
So you have the motion lined out for us, Clerk Thompson,
Yes, I do.
just to be able to utilize that money for Papke's as well as for,
Correct.
Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
discussion. Member Mutri.
Yeah, thank you. Currently, are there any guidelines for that grant writer, that 40,000 that we have in there?
Through the mayor, no.
Okay.
Again, we don't have a grant writer lined up. They're hard to come by right now. We've used it as knowing it's there. If we come across somebody and a grant that it works for it, we would try to take advantage of that. But we have nothing lined up.
Thank you.
So follow-up question though, did we spend any of that $40,000 in the last fiscal year?
No, I don't think we did. Yeah.
So it's just that
So it was appropriated last year and it will just be moved forward, basically is what we're doing. Okay, my question. Any other discussion on this amendment? Clerk, call the roll.
Thomas,
Yes.
Donna,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Jeff, David,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes. Okay, Member Lynn.
I would like to add $12,000 to the budget from from reserves in the general fund for the plowing of the roads at Papke's Landing that were promised during our borough formation. And what it would do is essentially continue what's been done out there in the past 10 years.
Is there a second for that?
I'll second that.
Motion's been made by Member Lynn, seconded by Member Kensinger to add $12,000 to the budget from the general fund.
Yes.
Reserves to plow the side roads at Papke's Landing. Discussion. Clerk, call the roll.
Donna,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Scott,
Amendment passes unanimously. That brings us back to the main motion, the fiscal year 2024 budget with 3 amendments. Any other discussion or proposed amendments? Clerk, call the roll on the main motion as amended.
Thomas,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Donna,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Bob,
Okay, the budget passes unanimously as amended in its second reading. That brings us to item D, ordinance 2023-08. This is an ordinance repealing chapters 11.48, 11.52, 11.56, and 11.60 of the former City of Petersburg Code and the Petersburg Municipal Charter, chapter 11.96, and amending PMC sections 11.12.040, 11.20.360, and 14.20.380. This is the second reading. I'd entertain a motion to approve this ordinance in its second reading.
Second.
Motion been made by Member Mucci and seconded by Member Lynn. This is the one about the harbor, so the liveaboard limit and the fees or fines for parking and speeding. Any discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
Thomas,
Yes.
Donna,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Jeff, David,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Mark.
Yes. Okay, ordinance 2023-09 passes unanimously in its second reading. That brings us to ordinance 2023-10. This is an ordinance amending section 16.12.030A of chapter 16.12, acquisition and disposal of borough-owned lands of the Petersburg Municipal Code, and to add federally recognized tribes to the list of entities that may purchase borough property for less than assessed value if determined by the assembly to be in the best interest of the borough. This is the second reading. I'd entertain a motion to adopt this ordinance in its second reading.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made by member Bucci, seconded by member Newman. Discussion? Clerk call, member Marsh.
I do, thank you. I appreciate, Mrs. Morrison coming to, present give her input. My understanding that the issue of recognizing the Petersburg Indian Association as a federally recognized tribe, which I understand it is, and granting it this inclusion in this list where they might purchase borough property at less than assessed value. To me, that is a separate issue than having that entity become a sovereign or declaring its sovereignty. Am I understanding it correctly, or is there something missing?
I don't know who would be best to explain that.
Through the mayor, I can try, and if I get off base, please correct me. So, what started this was we have some property that PIA is interested in from a housing perspective. And they asked the question, could they buy it at less than market? We said, yes, it's a possibility, but an ordinance has to be changed. So that was behind the scenes what this is all about. Tribal Chairman Chris Morrison has brought up some other issues that go well beyond this ordinance that I cannot speak to. I mean, that's not something I'm prepared to speak to. This change to this ordinance does not change tribal sovereignty one way or the other. What it does is make tribal status, in a sense, an issue that the assembly can weigh in on. If you decide later to say, we'll sell this property at less than market. If this vote doesn't pass, then we can't offer that service to PIA. They would have to have it in an open auction.
Okay, thank you. That actually is my understanding as well. What you just stated there, that makes sense. Thank you.
Any other discussion on ordinance 2023-10? Seeing none, clerk call the roll.
Mark,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Donna,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 2023-10 passes unanimously. And, remind everybody that these ordinances will have their third and final reading at 2 weeks from now. Item 15, new business, resolution 2023-08. This is a resolution setting the millage rates for fiscal year July 1st, 2023 through June 30th, 2024. If approved, resolution 2023-08 will set the fiscal year 2024 mill rate inside service area 1 at 10.84 mils and outside service area 1 at 4.2 mils. I'd entertain a motion to approve this resolution.
So moved.
For a second.
Second.
Motion's been made by member Mucci, seconded by member Marsh. Discussion. I have one question for the finance director. Is this an increase in the millage rate or a decrease in the millage rate from fiscal year 2023?
Decrease. Last year's was 11.5 for service area 1.
Member Lynn?
Follow up to that question though, with the increase in our in all the housing, the taxing of our real estate, is that even though there's a decrease in the mill rate, is it really kind of an offset is what we'll end up with?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions on setting the proposed mill rate for fiscal year 2024?
Yes,
Member Marsh.
thank you. Again, for Director Tao. So the millage rate for outside of service area 1 would be is set at 4.2. How does that compare with last year
Last year was 4.2 as well.
as well? Okay. Thank you.
Excuse me, if there's no other discussion, clerk, please call the roll.
Scott,
Yeah, excuse me, yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
Donna,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Okay, the mill rate has been set for fiscal year 2024. Next item, Southeast Alaska Solid Waste Authority alternate representative appointment change. The borough's CSWA representative, Public Works Director Cotta, and alternate representative, Utility Director Hagerman, request a change in the alternate representation position by removing Utility Director Hagerman and appointing Sanitation Supervisor Aaron Morrow. Without objection of the Assembly, I would like to appoint Supervisor Morrow to the CSWA alternate representative position. Is there any opposition from the Assembly? Then that is done. Member Kinzer?
No opposition. I just like to thank Carl and Chris for the many years of work they've done in this organization, and it's going to become increasingly important that this be an active organization going forward in the future, unless we want to be paying more to ship our garbage out than what it costs us to ship stuff in.
Okay. So that's done deal. Communications 16. There's a list of communications on this agenda on the Borough website. You don't read the correspondence received, so it's available to the public if they're interested in seeing the communications that we get. Item 17, Assembly discussion items. I don't see any listed. Any Assembly members have comments? Member Lynn?
Thank you. I went, after the last meeting, I had to go back and look at the grant that the hospital had applied for under the Denali Commission. I think I incorrectly answered a question that was asked by one of the Assembly members. And the question, I think, was the in-kind that we were given with the mud dump, was that for the construction outside the area that they were taking or inside? And the answer to the question, I think I said it was for outside, but that's not true. It's for part of it was for outside, but the majority of it was for inside. So I just need to correct that.
So that, and I asked the question, and I remember the answer. So that is gonna significantly change the amount of fill that will go into the mud dump if they get allowed to dump the waste from the site of the hospital and not just the utilities leading into it.
Yeah, that was the amount that we approved was the total amount that would be needed. And I think that was 175,000.
I think it was 165.
What, I think is what it was, cubic yards.
165,000 yards?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Member Lynn. Any other Assembly members have comments? Okay, seeing none. Recognitions. Any Assembly members or staff have recognitions? Member Newman.
I'd like to recognize PIA for all their wonderful contributions that they've made to this community. They're very valued. Thank you very much.
If there are, Member Kinzer.
Yes, I'd also like to recognize the Chamber of Commerce and thank them ahead of time for all the work they've done in planning Little Norway this coming week.
Any other recognitions? Okay, I think we're gonna take a 15-minute break and then we'll reconvene and I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Thanks, Mayor.
Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous.